Dennis, let's get started.
Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Galucki. Welcome to the 475th Imagine Greater Buffalo program and the 97th virtual Imagine lecture hosted by our wonderful Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Now, today's guest is the Reverend Mark Blue, president of the Buffalo chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. We're so glad you joined us today. This program is created by the Center for the Study of Art, Architecture, History, and Nature, or C-SAAHN as I like to pronounce it, and ImagineLifelongLearning.com. Before we get started, just a little housekeeping. Everyone watching will be muted and your video turned off. If you do have a question or comment, please type it into the chat box and we'll go through them at the end of the presentation. We are recording this program, so you can watch it again later on the Downtown Central Library's Facebook page and YouTube channels, and we certainly hope you share the link with your friends and networks. Now on to our featured speaker, the Reverend Mark E. Blue. We are very glad to have you here today. A Buffalo native, Pastor Mark Blue has dedicated his work to serve those who need a helping hand. He joined the United States Air Force Reserve in 1983 and retired in 2003 with the rank of Master Sergeant. Pastor Blue was called to the pastorate of Second Baptist Church of Lackawanna in 2001. And in 2012, he was elevated to serve as the president of the Baptist Ministers Conference of Buffalo and vicinity, where he is dedicated to working with pastors and ministers across Western New York. Also in 2012, Pastor Blue was appointed as the president of the board of directors of the Lackawanna Chambers of Commerce, an historical event as he is the first African-American to hold the presidency position within the Lackawanna Chamber. Pastor Blue also sits on the board of directors of Hilbert College. He is a Silver Life member of the Buffalo branch of the NAACP and is president. In response to Buffalo's mass shooting, Governor Kathy Hochul and Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown announced the establishment of the May 14th Memorial Commission. Reverend Blue serves as the chair of that commission. All right, Reverend Blue, your service to our community is unparalleled, and we are so glad to have you here today. Why don't you take it away and begin by describing what your role as president and what the role of the NAACP is today, and then we'll chat about its origins, literally traced back to Buffalo well over 100 years ago. Begin the conversation, Reverend Blue.
Well, Dennis, thank you. And I want to thank our great Erie County Public Library for putting this forum on. It is one of the opportunities that we have to learn more about our great city and region of Buffalo, New York. Buffalo, New York has been the start of a lot of great things. The role of the NAACP, my role as president, I realize that I'm standing on the shoes of giants, and in order to fulfill that role, we need community support. The NAACP, we just had our gala where we had Roland Martin come to be our keynote speaker to help energize, to help revitalize, and to help put a fire under not just the NAACP, but Buffalo proper. This was a great opportunity within the last 3 years of us coming together because of COVID, to where we were having an opportunity to socialize with our brothers and sisters and also look at things going forward. As the NAACP, we want to end racism. We want to eradicate it at every twist and turn. And we realize that it takes many hands to do the light work. So with that being the case, the NAACP started off as a multiracial, multicultural organization, but dealing with those who have been the most affected, most abused, most left out of society, which have been the African-American community. We realized that the change that we make for the African-American community is a change for all communities. Everyone will be able to thrive when one segment gets their opportunity to advance. So it is with great pleasure I take on this role as president of the NAACP to help move and to galvanize our people to realize the importance and the power in which we possess as individuals. There are many committees of the NAACP. We have our education committee, which is dealing with a lot of the issues, the current issues now, the disparate proportion of suspensions between African Americans and minorities. We are looking at the reading to help that area as well, and also to increase our graduation rates. We realize that it takes all of us to be a part of this. On our Veterans Committee, as you noticed, the Veterans Monument that was just unveiled, the NAACP had members on that committee as well, because it covers 12 campaigns in which African Americans have been a part of, but have not been recognized in. So we're trying to bring to light all of the things in which we have been contributors in that history has not recorded on print and that they're not learning in school. So it is with great pleasure that we come and be a part of this. We realize that voting, the Voting Rights Act of 1964 has been obliterated by the Supreme Court. And now we have to try to forge ahead and repair that and get more people involved in the voting process. So it's a great challenge, but we take it with great enthusiasm because we know we can make changes together. We have to continue to educate people on what's going on so they can be smarter and more educated voters with the issues at hand. The NAACP is a nonpartisan organization, so we stand to try to bridge the gap between individuals who haven't made up their mind who to vote for. We try to inform everyone of the issues and of the individuals who are running so they can make an intelligent and comprehensive decision as to who they want to vote for. And it's very important in these mid-year elections that we have the right people in place that have the right thinking, that have the right interests to make sure that we can forge ahead and not go backwards. It was a travesty. January 6th was a travesty to our whole democracy. What took place there, the revolt, the insurrection, and the gang and guerrilla warfare that have almost broken the fabric of America. That right there should have never taken place, but that was because the wrong leadership was in charge. So we as Americans, we as African Americans, we as Americans, and the reason I said it just like that is because we are part of America. When people say go back to Africa, I'm saying I was born in America. So in other words, when you look at America, no one was actually originated here. We all came from a ship, unless you are American Indian. We all came from someplace else to migrate here and to call this place home. So no one has a right to tell us to go back to Africa or any other place because we all came from other places. But here it is. I was born in America, and we ought to treat everyone with fairness and justice.
Sounds good. Good ideas, but could you state the mission of the NAACP? What is it trying to accomplish over its history? And its starting dates are over 100 years, if I'm not mistaken. You could fill us in exactly. But how do you measure success? How do you look at a community, not just Buffalo, but the other NAACPs around the nation? What are the best practices that they have found so that they can measure and say, see, our efforts are paying off in some way? How might that look?
One is education, increasing the graduation rates, increasing the reading rates, increasing the math and comprehension. The NAACP, we want to make sure that our children, our African-American, our minority children, are being educated in the proper way. Now, well, let me explain what I mean the proper way. We have a lot of people, teachers, who may live in the suburbs, but they really don't have an opportunity to really socialize and understand. It's not just them, it's just teachers in general. We have to have a dialogue with our teachers so our teachers can understand that if a child is saying, hey, that's bad, they're not meaning that that's bad, that's wrong, but that's just the type of language that we come about with a breakdown in communication, a breakdown in cultures. We have to be more culturally sensitive to individuals that we're teaching, that we're being around, even sitting in boardrooms. When we look at diversity, equity, diversity, and inclusion, is that just a buzzword? The fabric of America should look like America. In our boardrooms, there should be diversity and not just one segment of society. In the education, there should be diversity. We should have diverse teachers, Black and white teachers, all coming together and not being ostracized. America has made African-American as if it's a bad word. If you don't believe me, look at society, look at the media, look at the movies, and tell me, when you look at an African-American, be it man or woman, they're depicted as villains, they're depicted as less than, as criminals, and that's something that society has allowed that stereotype to exacerbate itself, to where when people look at us, they're looking at us in an eye of disrespect and not being equal with others. So there has to be a change in Hollywood, a change in our commercials, a change in our programming, that we're looking at when we see African Americans, that we're not less than, that we are equal to. So as we gauge the barometer of how are we making a difference, more teachers in school, African American teachers in school, more in the boardroom, more in decision-making opportunities, more in politics. We need to be all over to make the right decisions. And also so people will understand our culture. Our culture is not unique, but it needs to be understood. And that's one of the things that's not been happening in America. Again, we've been treated as less than and not equal to. So how do we gauge it? Having more individuals in more places that have positions of power and authority to help make better diversity and inclusion in America. That's just one way.
Very good. Describe what you think Black Lives Matter has done for creating awareness. Then series of events, but certainly here in Buffalo, capped by May 14th. Well, it's like what preceded Black Lives Matter and the summer of 2020, and then followed, as I say, by the events, on May 14th of this year. It's almost like from where I sit, it feels like two different worlds of awareness. Are you sensing the same culture change that I have to believe others besides myself are experiencing?
Well, one of the things that's happened, and when you look at 2020 with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and all the others occurrences that happened then, and to top it off with what we just went through with this mass and racist shooting on May the 14th, it's a combination. Even with January 6th, with the president with number 45, he helped to continue and perpetuate this fraud. We realized that with the inception of body cameras and cell phones, that a lot of the things that transpired, the atrocities that happened against African Americans would not have been highlighted, but they were captured by video. We knew these things were happening all along, but now America was seeing what was happening. And when we look at January 6th, that just capped it off. When we look at the marches that took place during the campaign of 45, when he made statements like, I can kill someone on Fifth Avenue and still get away with it, that continued to perpetuate a fraud. When he said during that violent march that there's some good and bad people, that continued to perpetuate a fraud. When he said, stand by to that racist group, that continued to perpetuate a fraud, to where people felt that they were entitled and that they could continue to eviscerate their position as white Americans. So one of the things that's been happening, even with 514, we had an individual come from a different area and totally disrupt the fabric of our society by intentionally killing African Americans at a grocery store where it was in a literal food desert, to where there were no other grocery stores in that area. We have to do better by this, because what happened then will continue to happen if we don't stand up and say something about it. That type of action needs to stop, cease, and desist. When I look at 514 and what happened and how this individual was able to come into our community and just cause havoc and devastation, I look at Walden, Harlem, and all the way down to Transit, where you see several grocery stores. Now listen, it's the same stretch of road that's on Jefferson, but you see more grocery stores and shopping venues in that area than you do on Jefferson. The question is why? Why do we allow this to happen? How come we have to be reactionary people instead of people with vision to do more in our communities to prevent these things from happening? It's incumbent upon us to learn from our history. History will repeat itself if we don't start to make changes now. We have to be forthright in what we're doing and purposeful for what we're doing, and looking to be forging ahead and not just being satisfied with where we are right now. It was an atrocity that happened, and I think we all know. And I still get upset about that, because it happened. It happened here. It should never have happened here, but we were complacent.
Well, that puts us in a special, unique spot nationally and globally in some ways to be addressing these very issues that your organization has been speaking about for its entirety. Joy will put together and see if we have some questions, but so one last reminder, get those questions in. But very quickly, who are members of the NAACP? Are they individuals? Are they organizations? Do you become a network for communicating ideas out to churches, businesses? Describe the NAACP. Who belongs?
We have members who are individual. You can be a corporate member to help support the NAACP. Our website is buffalonaacp.org, where we have our list of committees of the NAACP. And the NAACP isn't just a Black organization. When we look at the very inception of the NAACP, it was a multicultural organization. The Spingarn Award is an award named after the first president of the NAACP, who is of Jewish descent. But when we look at the issues most concerning in the NAACP, we look at those who have been most marginalized, which are and are still the African-American community. But don't get me wrong, what changes can be made with the African-American community, once those changes are resolved, it affects all communities. It affects all communities. So it's, we focus on the area of most need and the most devastated and the most marginalized. But once we upgrade that area, it affects everyone. When we talk about voter rights, it affects everyone. When we talk about human rights, it affects everyone. But we have to deal with the base first. So any and everybody can be a member of the NAACP. It does not discriminate. We even have children who are members of the NAACP as we forge ahead to get our young people's group together. I'll share this thought. My granddaughter, 4 years old, is a life member of the youth branch of the NAACP. So it's not limited by age. It's anybody and everybody can be a member of the NAACP.
Well, as I'm looking at your logo behind you, and hearing this morning's news, the way they depicted the first person of color to be in the British prime minister, and he's an Indian, but the whole idea of colored is interesting. It's gone like full circle because I in my lifetime, people were Negroes, people were African Americans. Then it seemed people were Black, and I'm not sure what's the right way to describe people that unifies us rather than divides us. And I struggle with this. I'm curious of your own reactions to the terminology to even better describe us, so we're not using colored, even though it's in your logo.
Well, when we look at that word colored, let's look from our history. Our history has depicted that. It is not just a word that we just thought about. Our history has depicted that in society throughout slavery. We were depicted as colored, as Negroes, or the N-word. That was something that was done. But when we look at it now, it's affecting all of us. The emblem and the logo, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, is just that. When the African Americans are being elevated, everyone is elevated. So the logo is just what it is. When we look at different other ethnic groups that have Italian Day, German Day, everyone celebrates it, but we got to look at the intent. When we look at even some of the Jewish festivals, Jewish holidays, Christian holidays, they're dealing with a certain segment of people, a certain population of people. So that should not matter when people are talking about people. We are people, and we ought to be treated and respected as people, whatever color that we are. And why did they make a big difference in the UK on this person? Because for years, they went by color. They went by white. So now they're making a big deal. They didn't say person. They have to emphasize he's a person of color.
Yeah, all right. Joy, how are we doing for questions so we can engage our community that's online?
We do have a couple of questions for Reverend Blue. The first one, in your opinion, does Buffalo have the people and the financial backing to lead the change? And specifically, that came in after you talked about the food deserts. So we all know things need to change. Can we do it? Can we pull it off, and how?
I believe with many partners in our society, in Buffalo proper. Buffalo is a city of wealth. We do have wealth. It's just disproportionately placed. So I believe we can, by coming together and also by looking outside the scope as well. We have a lot of resources here, but we have a lot of resources of individuals that want to give to help make that change. We cannot do it solely in and of ourselves, but there are others as well that we can partner with. And that's one of the things about collaboration and partnership. We can get it done. When we are serious about it, we can get things done.
Another question, what advice do you give to today's youth?
I tell them to be encouraged. And here it is, join the NAACP. One of the things that we want to teach our youth is to be activists. One of the slogans that we have now is put down the bullets and pick up the ballot. We have to get our young children educated on voting. If you're not eligible to vote now, we want to teach you how to vote. As a matter of fact, Governor has signed an executive order that those who are 16 and 17 can pre-register to vote. So when you're 18 years old, you're already registered and you just get your voting card mailed to your home. Also, when it comes down to voting, individuals who are formerly incarcerated or formerly on parole are eligible to vote. They can re-register to vote and become a voting member. Now, the voting deadline has passed for this election, but you can register to vote for the next upcoming election. And that's one of the things that we want to get out in the public now, that people can register to vote for the next upcoming election. And we have to be very proactive in this. So we want to teach our young people to become engaged in the process. Our young people are very smart. They're very intelligent. And we want to get them to a point where they can stand up and communicate their thoughts and not be in an area where some people want to entice them to be violent, entice them to come out of their character. So we want to educate our young people. We want them to be a part of the generation now that's going to take over for us.
And then
Right,
one
go ahead. I was going to, just
Sorry,
as a
Dennis.
follow-up to that idea, you're mentioning young people. What's the NAACP done creatively to connect with young people using social media, using the new technology tools that are available that just weren't there 20, 30 years ago?
Well, you said it exactly right. We are on social media. We have a website. We're engaging with our young people. We're getting back and reestablishing the AXO program, which is for young people. That AXO program has 21 cohorts in which people can participate in. It is almost like a Special Olympics in education that we're trying to gear them back into. We have one of the former AXO winners of the program, Karen Saxon, who is leading that charge for the AXO program. So we're looking forward to re-engaging with our young people, having a youth branch of the NAACP, working with the college branch of the NAACP, so they can be properly trained to be activists and to be activists in the right way, to where people will listen to them when they talk and when they speak. So we are on every form of social media, LinkedIn, all forms of social media. And one of the things that we have to do is get younger people to be involved to put us to where we need to be.
Sounds good. Joy, I cut you off. What else?
I just have one final question. As chair of the May 14th Memorial Commission, what are the next steps? Last week or earlier this week, you announced the allocation of some monies. What is that commission doing now?
As the commission for the 514 Survivors Fund, that group is disbanded now because we completed that portion. And as the chair for the monument, we're going to be having a series of meetings, and we're going to be partnering with the state, with the city, and also with some other philanthropists to look at where the monument is going to be erected. We're working with the families, and we'll be working with communities that will help make that decision. That decision will not be solely made by one person. that decision will be made by the community. And we're looking at areas to where we can erect that monument where it benefits the community. So we have a series of meetings planned in which we will lay that out for the community.
Do you have some timetables with the monument and this thought process?
Well, with it just starting, we don't have a time, ending time as of yet. But once we get our meetings, in our meetings, we'll try to set some guidelines. And as you do know, it is a sensitive topic and subject, but we need to be very careful and purposeful for when we do it, because you really only have one time to do this. And we want to make sure that everyone is included in the process.
If I could offer the suggestion, you want to reach out to youth, they're in schools. If you could get take the Buffalo public school system to engage teachers, to engage their students in being part of the dialogue about such an important event. They all know it happened. They all know where it happened. It's in our neighborhood. It's all of us here in Buffalo, in a 14208 zip code. The terrible nature of what brought that to bear covers so many different aspects. Social media, youth feeling compelled to be almost mesmerized and hypnotized by it to do such a heinous act of violence. And as you point out, drive all the way from the Binghamton area to come to Buffalo to do that. All of these are teaching moments of awareness. How do we engage that youth to be part of your process? That's what I would invite you to consider.
Oh, yes, definitely. Listen, when I say community, our youth are some of the best and brightest in the world. And we could not do our due diligence in erecting anything without their input. So they will definitely be included in the process. And then that's also a teachable moment of working together and collaborating with our youth, because this monument is going to far exceed our life expectancy. We want it to be something that will be lasting. We want it to be something not only memorable, but a teachable moment as well. So our youth would definitely be engaged in the process.
Well, and I think of whether it's the World Trade Center, places where Oklahoma's federal building, I mean, these become community centers for lifelong learning, literally about the events that happen at that spot. And there's many others around our country, sadly, that are so marked. So that's the importance of it. And that's why, but also to add the digital content, that it's not just one physical, it's an educational spot. I hope there's a website that you developed that shows the pictures of the temporary monuments or memorials that were created, the presentations, the speeches, and make this something really part of our fabric of our community, that we humbly move towards a better future.
Absolutely. All of that will be taken into consideration. And thank you for your input.
Good. Joy, I think we pretty much used up our time. Any last questions? Joy, maybe you could just comment. The library system to me is the heartbeat of lifelong learning. This is like creating a culture. How does the library view itself relative to events like May 14th? How do you even think about helping the community come to terms with its meaning and going forward with hope?
So there's a couple ways to answer that question. And I'll also invite our library director who's on this to participate if he wants to. I mean, first and foremost, we have a library 1 block from Tops, the Meriwether Branch Library, which before the incident happened was a busy community hub, a place where a lot of people come from all walks of life to learn about the community. There's many classes and training programs that take place in that library. It really has been the community library in its current location and in its former location. people still call it the Fillmore Jefferson Library, even though it's the Frankie Merriweather Library. So that library, right after that incident happened, in fact, really within hours, it became a location for people who live in the community, people who worked at Tops, people who, the media from all over the world, to come into that library and either have dialogue or sit peacefully or try to understand what has happened to our community. That library continues to be a focal point toward bringing the community together. And in the coming months, we'll talk about some book collections that are being donated through Project Flight, and also St. Joseph Scholastic High School is donating some books on diversity and equality. And so that library in itself, its staff, we work with everyone to, like all of our libraries, welcome everyone. And that library in particular was also hit, just like every other business and organization in that community. I see John just logged in. I also want to talk about, and maybe I'm going to let me see if I can unmute John Spears, our director. We also want to throw in just probably a statement about the way that the library is working with the Buffalo History Museum, UB, Buff State, and other organizations to put together a collection on the May 14th disaster, you know, so that this doesn't happen again, so that there are mementos and artifacts that people can see, read, learn about, oral histories, to really try to understand what happened to our community. With that, John, I'm going to kind of mute myself and ask if you don't mind. Sorry, I put you on the spot there, but I noticed you were in the call, so.
No,
I can hear you. Okay.
No, I'll kind of pick up where Joy was talking about the project that we're working on with the History Museum around the events of May 14th. You know, a library has a lot of roles in the community, and after that day, you know, the Merriweather Library, as Joy said, really did take on almost the role, you know, if you think of the community as a house, the library was living room. And another, to use another room analogy, we're also the community's attic. And we are hopefully a place that, in partnership with some of the other agencies in town, we're going to be able to allow the voices of May 14th, the voices of that community, the people who were most affected by this, to tell their own story, so that in 50 years or 100 years, or when people look back on the events of that day, they're not reading another interpretation of it. They're not hearing an interpretation other than the interpretation and the voices of the people who were most affected. And that, I think, is one of the most important things that we can do around this, is make sure that that entire community knows that this story is not for anyone to tell but them. And we want to make sure that happens. I think one of the other things that the library can do moving forward, and it ties into so much of what Joy said, is, you know, we are a place where the entire community, where everyone who comes in our doors is the same. It doesn't matter if you are Black or white, if you are housed or unhoused, if you are gay or straight, if you are Christian or atheist. Everyone is welcome in the library, and everyone is here in a sense of equality. And I think that hopefully the library can use that to benefit the community moving forward, to be able to have some of the difficult conversations around why this happened. Because, you know, I was at one of the community meetings discussing May 14th, and one of the things that was said was, we can't talk about this without talking about white hate and without talking about white supremacy. And those are things that make certain people feel uncomfortable, but those are the discussions that have to happen. And hopefully a venue such as the library is one where those difficult discussions can happen in a way that they can be productive, and people will be willing to listen to each other, to finally hear what people are saying, people who come from very disparate backgrounds and very disparate places in this community. So I think there's a tremendous amount the library can do on this, and hopefully we're up to the challenge.
Perfect. John Spears is the director of the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library System. Think of it, there's 37 branches just in Erie County of the library. It's one of our great treasures and resources for lifelong learning, education, and our tax dollars cover this. So it's free to walk in the door, use the services. Everybody always says the people are the friendliest in town to be and are the most helpful. That's what they're there for. So this Imagine program for the last 13 years now has tried to add a dimension to the library, now a video dimension, but a program where community leaders like today's speaker, you, Reverend Mark Blue, have an opportunity, a platform, if you will, to tell your story and have it archived. As John Spear said, years from now, you want to know how the people at the time were experiencing that event and the hope that they were projecting onto the community. That's been the goal of the Imagine Greater Buffalo program, and today's been a great program, frankly, in my estimation, to further that mission along. Joy, John, thank you both for commenting and putting you both on the spot. Well done. So what we're going to do is say goodbye to today's program and thank all the folks that joined us today. Thank you again, Reverend Blue, for participating and being part of the Imagine Greater Buffalo series. We'll get back to you here on Zoom next Tuesday. Life willing, as we hear from Carrie Gallo from the Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper. And speaking of optimism and hope on this beautiful, bright fall day that we have, Carrie Gallo is going to talk about one of the great success stories in water treatment right in the middle of Buffalo. Where? In Forest Lawn Cemetery. The Scajaquada Creek has been in need of great attention for years, and the Waterkeeper have been doing a faithful job of harnessing the community's resources, but more importantly, harnessing a collaboration of many, many groups. That's what we're going to hear next week to create a very successful program. So I hope you'll come back and mention it to others as we focus to some degree on the Scajaquada program and beyond. So I'm Dennis Galucki, wishing you a good day. Be well.